On the deck, the enormous purse seine net, the main weapon of the voyage, lay neatly stacked like a sleeping monster. This net, over a nautical mile long and hundreds of fathoms deep, was woven from ultra-durable synthetic nylon fibers, capable of withstanding the tension of hundreds of tons of seafood. When cornered, the fishermen, with their calloused and nimble hands, were checking each foam buoy along the upper deck and the heavy lead weights along the lower deck. After 2 days and nights at sea, the ship had entered a key fishing ground. At this point, control came the brain of operation. Gone were the days of observing seagulls or judging fish by the color of the water. Today's cabin was filled with modern technology. The captain's eyes never left the sweeping sonar screens and the brightly colored depth gauges. The green, yellow, and then bright red bands on the long-range radar screen signaled significant changes beneath. The atmosphere on board instantly became tense. The battle order bells rang out incessantly. The entire crew of over 20 men sprang from their sleeping quarters and rushed onto the deck. Each man went about his assigned task with the precision honed over hundreds of voyages. Rubber boots clattered on the steel deck, helmets were fastened securely, and bright orange life vests were hastily donned. Everyone knew that the decisive moment had arrived. The high-speed canoe was lowered into the water at breakneck speed, firmly securing one end of the net as a pivot point. Simultaneously, the mothership accelerated to full power, following a perfect arc to encircle the school of fish. From the stern, the enormous net plunged into the sea like a black waterfall. Thousands of buoys danced on the waves, forming a distinct boundary on the water's surface. Meanwhile, tons of lead weights pulled the edge of the net below. The ship circled nearly a kilometer in diameter. The roar of the waves, the screeching of the engines, and the whistling of the wind through the gaps in the nets created a dramatic symphony. When the bow of the mothership met the original canoe, the encirclement was officially complete. But the real battle had only just begun, because now the fish below had realized the danger. They began to panic, diving straight to the bottom in search of escape. The central hydraulic winch system began to roar. The wrist-thick steel cables stretching taut like guitar strings, emitting terrifying creaking sounds. Pulling the lead wire was the most crucial step. It narrowed the bottom of the net like a giant drawstring bag, completely trapping the fish inside, preventing them from diving any deeper. The tension in the cable was so great that seawater vaporized from the winch drums, creating hazy smoke due to friction and heat. Once the bottom of the net is securely locked, the next task is to narrow the net surface area to herd the fish into a pool, the area closest to the ships. sighed in preparation for scooping them up. At this point, the sea is no longer to return. 100 tons of fish, perhaps even more, are thrashing about frantically. Millions of fishtails clash together, creating a roaring sound like a massive downpour of rain. Each meter of net was pulled in by cranes and human strength. The fishermen stood in a long line on the deck, their feet gripping the wet and slippery deck. They used their entire body weight and muscular strength to pull, rhythmically chanting 1, 2, 3, cheers, in unison. Sweat mixed with salty seawater streamed down their suntanned faces. Their hands, even with thick protective gloves, could still feel the intense heat and the tremendous tension of the net. The sea surface now turned a dazzling silvery white. Plump mackerel and pristine white anchovies began leaping out of the water. Creating a magnificent spectacle like a moving open-air silver mine, the net narrowed, the pressure increasing steadily. The net stretched taut, the mesh stretched to its limit, and seawater was forced out, splashing in tiny streams. When the fish were confined to a narrow space near the ship's side, a torrent of fish poured into the ship's hold. The sound of fish tails slapping against the stainless steel walls of the hold echoed like a battle drum. The fish were fresh, with clear eyes and glossy bodies, full of the breath of the deep sea. The scooping process continued non-stop for hours. Bucket after bucket, the ship's fish hold was gradually filled. The ship's cooling system worked at full capacity to lower the temperature to below freezing immediately, ensuring the absolute freshness. When the last catches were gathered, the empty nets were neatly folded back in place, ready for the next voyage. The ship was now more stable, sinking deeper into the water, burdened with the riches of the ocean. Heading toward land, the ship cut through the waves, leaving behind a once calm sea, concluding a magnificent chapter in its life at sea. When the first 100-ton catch was sorted and safely stored in the freezer hold, the atmosphere on the ship temporarily quieted down. But it wasn't complete rest, rather a lull between two major battles. Seafarers understand that migratory fish never stand still waiting. Beneath the deep waters, ocean currents rising from the seabed are carrying enormous amounts of plankton, dragging along armies of mackerel and tuna along the deep trenches far offshore. On the ship's deck, the pungent smell of fish blood mingled with the salty, dried scent of oil and grease under the harsh sea breeze. The sailors seized every minute, every second to regain their strength. They sat slumped on the wooden decks, leaning against the steel hull, tilting their heads back to gulp down strong. Bitter tea to ward off the drowsiness weighing heavily on their eyelids. Their hands corroded by the sea, their skin peeling. Down in the engine room, the roar of the 2,100 horsepower main engine never ceased. The rhythmic pounding of the pistons against the cylinder walls created a resounding mechanical beat. Transmit vibrations through fiber of steel, up to the deck and into the very bones of the seafarers. The chief engineer, with an oil-soaked rag stuck to his side, constantly crawled through the dark nooks and crannies of the ship's hull to check the temperature of the propeller bearings. This system is the lifeblood of the entire ship. If the hydraulic winch loses pressure while holding hundreds of tons of fish in the next haul, the entire net system, worth billions of dong, will be pulled down to the seabed, or worse, the tension will snap the steel cables, sweeping away everything in its path. Far out at sea, the sky began to turn a deep purple as the sun set. Looking down from the cabin, that area of light resembled a giant magnet. The phototactic properties of marine life began to take effect. At first, there were only schools of small squid, shimmering like glass arrows darting through the water, then dense swarms of tiny anchovies, like a fluffy white cloud. And then, what everyone had been waiting for arrived, the grey shadows. The fish finder screen no longer displayed broken color bands, but a solid, bright red mass stretching from a depth of 40 meters up to the surface. The fish were so numerous that they were interfering with the ship's sonar signals. They crowded together, creating a dynamic water pressure that caused the sea around the ship to bubble and churn like a giant boiling pot. At this moment, canoe was lowered.
Yes, sir.
Every movement at this moment had to be absolutely precise and silent. Even a single loud clank of the iron chain against the side of the ship could cause the fish to panic, dive deep into the water, and disappear in an instant. The mothership moved silently like a ghost on the dark sea, deploying its lead-weighted seine net around the illuminated canoe. The real battle began when the net closed and the illuminated canoe switched off its lighting system. The hydraulic winch screeched deafeningly. The entire crew rushed into close combat. The pulling force of this night's net haul was far more terrifying than during the day, because the nighttime currents were usually more turbulent and unpredictable. The 24 millimeters diameter steel cables were stretched to their limit, trembling violently, shooting out tiny jets of water due to the extreme pressure. The crew constantly signaled the younger sailors to retreat behind the safety line. Sweat mixed with the cold of the night dew and the salty taste of the waves, seeping into the eyes and mouths of the fishermen, but no one dared let go. They clung tightly to the net, pulling with all their might. The edges of the net at the bottom were pulled tight, transforming the net into a giant cage suspended in the middle of the ocean. Hundreds of tons of fish inside began to thrash about wildly. The crashing waves and the thrashing of fishtails created a terrifying roar. The enormous hydraulic scoop, the diameter of 3 adults' arms, was lowered into the center of the net. The moment the scoop touched the water, it was immediately submerged in a wave of fish glistening in the night lights. The crane strained, its gleaming hydraulic cylinders pushing out to their fullest extent, lifting the first catch into the air. It was a moving mass of pure silver. The plump Moen sardines, the boys, tracé the boat. When the bottom of the bucket opened at the mouth of the hold, a massive torrent of fish poured down into the ship's hold. The sound of the fish crashing down was like thunder, filling the compartments lined with finely crushed ice and circulating seawater at -5 degrees Celsius. This process repeated continuously for 3 hours. The deck was filled with the joy of victory. Tired, haggard faces, worn down by lack of sleep, suddenly brightened. As the last catch was unloaded into the hold, the eastern sky began to brighten with the first rays of a new day. The Norse pulled it in hold, neatly folded in light battle. The ship had now sunk another meter into the water, its hull heavy with over 200 tons of fresh fish, the fruit of courage, unity, and the salty sweat of those who considered the sea their home. They then continued to steer the ship out to sea. Once the catch was safely secured in the ship's hold, the upper deck was temporarily cleaned, but deep inside, another battle silent but equally fierce began. It was a race against time to preserve the ocean's white gold. Hundreds of tons of fish in the hold, if not properly temperature controlled, would quickly lose their freshness. Their flesh would become mushy, and their economic value would be halved. In the ship's hold, icy cold air emanated from the gas pipes of the industrial compressor system. The temperature quickly dropped to below freezing. The sailors assigned to hold duty wore thick cotton suits under their waterproof jackets, wool hats, high-top rubber boots, and wielded large shovels to continuously level the enormous piles of fish that had just been dumped. Streams of fine, powdery ice are sprayed from the automatic ice crusher, coating the gleaming silver mackerel and tuna in a pristine white layer. The coordination between those on deck and those in the hold is seamless, like a miniature factory assembly line in the middle of the ocean. One person scoops the fish, another rakes the ice, and another sprays chilled seawater to create a layer of ice around each fish, keeping them in perfect condition as if they had just been lifted from the water. On the deck, jets of fresh water are sprayed from high-pressure hoses to wash away all the remaining fish slime, scales, and blood. The water, mixed with red blood, flows continuously through the vents on the ship's sides, staining the surrounding seawater. The smell of the sea, the smell of fresh fish, and the smell of hard work blend together, creating a distinctive aroma that only those who have lived on the waves and made the ship's deck their home can truly understand and cherish. The ship, now heavily laden with hundreds of tons of fish, had a low center of gravity that helped it withstand the pounding of the waves. Each time a giant wave crashed down from the side, the ship tilted, the steel creaking and groaning. Then it proudly and resolutely straightened up again, splitting the waves and surging forward. It was a test of endurance between human will, modern shipbuilding technology, and the primal power of nature. The dark, heavy clouds gradually rose and dispersed on the distant horizon, giving way to the first rays of the new day, warm, honey-colored rays of sunlight pouring down onto the deep blue ocean. The sea, after the storm, was strangely calm, with only gentle ripples lapping against the ship's sides, as if to soothe and comfort the weariness of a long night. The captain stepped out onto the cabin balcony, taking a deep breath of the fresh, salty sea air. He looked down at the deck, where his fellow sailors lay scattered about. Some had fallen asleep on large ropes, others had their heads resting on life vests. Their faces still marked with dry white sea salt, but their lips curved into contented smiles in their deep sleep. The ship's hold was now full, its hull submerged well below the safe waterline, signaling a successful voyage. The engine's hum shifted to a deeper, more steady rhythm, the rhythm of homecoming. The ship turned 180 degrees, heading straight towards the mainland, towards its home harbor, where family and children awaited its arrival. Each voyage is a challenging expedition, but the rewards for the brave are always well worth it. Same from afar, carrying hundreds of tons of fish resembles a majestic steel fortress gliding across the sea. Sparkling in the dawn light, leaving behind an endless trail of white foam, the trail of those who write the epic of conquering the deep. See with their sweat, courage, and undying love for the vast ocean,